Do China and Russia hate the U.S. or does the U.S. hate China and Russia? That's what we're supposed to believe based on the lies from mainstream media. Personally, I don't believe that these three countries or these two countries, China and Russia, that they hate America or Americans. Um, and I'm talking about in terms of leadership, political leadership. Americans may not necessarily hate the Chinese, but the governments, the different administrations that have been there in the U.S., they behave like they are at enmity with China and Russia. It's what some call saber rattling. There's always talk about, or potentially the U.S. might go to war with Russia or with China, and sometimes some of these so-called wars are actually economic, but do they really hate each other? Personally, I don't believe so. Revelation 13 says that the second beast, America, is working with the papacy, which is the first beast, and the purpose is to cause the whole world to worship or follow the papacy. The papacy has no army, I've said that many times, and they therefore use the US with its 750 to 800 military bases around the world to worship the papacy, and those who do not comply will be put to death when the mark of the beast is implemented or enforced around the world. And I think I've said this in one of my other videos, but I just wanted to say it again here that this whole talk of China being the next superpower, that's not going to happen. China is basically the manufacturing base for the whole world. Most manufacturing has been moved to China, including some of the manufacturing that used to happen in America, which just shows that they're basically working together. So China has one military base, which is in Djibouti. In the future, they may have more than one military base, but at the moment, the one I know of is in Djibouti. But America, compared to America, which has 750 to 800 military bases around the world, America has the most bases around the world. And even if you look at its military budget, America spends more on its budget than I think all the countries in Europe combined. So it's a fallacy to think that China can fight with America, or that China is going to be the next superpower, or that Russia and China combined are going to fight America. They're not going to fight America because they're working together. So in 1720, Michelangelo Tamburini, who was then the general of the Jesuits, said to the Duke of Brancas, "See, my lord, from this room, I govern not only Paris but China, not only China but the whole world, without anyone knowing how it is managed." So even in 1720, the general of the Jesuits was already, stating that he was in control of basically or governing the whole world, including China, which is one of the countries I'm talking about in this video. We all know that you can't have, this is me speaking, you can't have a revolution or war without money. This applies to the Bolshevik Revolution and all other revolutions and wars. A man named Anthony Sutton wrote some books in which he detailed how the Russian Revolution was financed by Wall Street. The book is called Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution. Sutton also wrote a book titled Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, in which he says that Hitler's Nazi government was funded by Americans. And don't forget that when Hitler came to power, Germany had just come out of a recession where the fiat money was basically worthless. You actually had to carry paper money in a wheelbarrow in order to go and buy a loaf of bread in Germany at that time, before Hitler came along. So where did Hitler get all the money from to build all those planes and to build all those tanks and vehicles? Basically, the answer is the financial support came from Wall Street or from Americans. So just there's a summary of one of Anthony Sutton's books here, and it says, "Why did the 1917 American Red Cross mission to Russia include more financiers than medical doctors? Rather than caring for the victims of war and revolution, its members seemed more intent on negotiating contracts with the Kerensky government and subsequently the Bolshevik regime. In a courageous investigation, Anthony Sutton, who wrote those two books that I mentioned, establishes tangible historical links between U.S. capitalists and Russian communists. The communists and the capitalists all work together. Drawing on State Department files, personal papers of key Wall Street figures, biographies, and conventional histories, Sutton talks about the role of Morgan banking executive in funneling illegal Bolshevik gold into the U.S., the co-option of the American Red Cross by powerful Wall Street forces, the intervention by Wall Street sources to free the Marxist revolutionary Leon Trotsky, whose aim was to topple the Russian government. The deals made by major corporations to capture the huge Russian market a decade and a half before the US recognized the Soviet regime, and the secret sponsoring of communism by leading businessmen who publicly championed free enterprise. Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution traces the foundations of Western funding of the Soviet Union. Dispassionately and with overwhelming documentation, the author details a crucial phase in the establishment of communist Russia. This classic study, first published in 1974 and part of a key trilogy, is reproduced in its original form. So something else as well, just to prove that the Soviets, the communists, and the American capitalists were working together. When the Allied troops successfully invaded France near the end of World War II, they discovered that they had something in common with their German enemies: Ford and General Motors vehicles running on gasoline provided by Standard Oil. When the Twin Towers and Building 7 were demolished, dumpster trucks, which were clearly on standby, moved in to remove all the debris. They steal from the Twin Towers and Building 7. Remember, Building 7 wasn't hit by a plane, but it still collapsed, which just shows that there were actually bombs in the Twin Towers and in Building 7. The steel from these buildings were then shipped to China for recycling. If the US and China hate each other, why would this be allowed to happen?
And then there was one. Look at that. Jesus.
Where's the other one?
And now the second one.
No, one fell down. This could be a fire of another building?
Right. There's a building.
Right, that's why it's like so dark. I don't know.
Because it's still burning.
There's like ambulances everywhere. Look, Houston is roped off down there. You see it? The police have it roped off. Why? Oh, anything going downtown?
Maybe they blocked them downtown. Like, you can't go any further than this.
But there's more cops right here. Look.
There's enough from downtown.
Look at this. This is a major thoroughfare where we are.
Garbage trucks.
I know. Are they getting bodies out?
This is like slowly green.
It does. And this is a major corner.
See, they roped it off to bring these things.
That's what's going on.
This is the paper's right time.
Oh, this is going to be, they're probably, this is probably going to be getting debris out of here.
It's wild out here. They just keep coming. Look. It doesn't stop. There's more. I keep thinking it's at the end, and it's not.
It's being dispatched somewhere, right? Maybe it's being dispatched from down here.
In that area of the east side that needs generator power, because they may need it for quite some time. We were able to move 120 dump trucks out of the city last night, which will give you a sense of the work that was done overnight. So some of the debris has already been removed. More of it is being removed, and it'll be done by barge all throughout the day today. The subway system is operating.
A U.S. Congressman named Larry McDonald once said, "The drive of the Rockefellers and their allies is to create a one-world government combining supercapitalism and communism under the same tent, all under their control." So I hope you heard that supercapitalism and communism is basically run by the same people, including the Rockefellers. And it goes on to say, do I mean conspiracy? Yes, I do. I'm convinced there is such a plot, international in scope, generations old in the planning, and incredibly evil in intent. Congressman Larry P. McDonald was killed in the Korean Airlines 747 that was shot down by the Soviets. That was in 1976. Larry McDonald had also been on American TV exposing the New World Order agenda and naming names. So why would the Soviets shoot down a plane carrying a U.S. congressman if they were not working together? Larry McDonald needed to be silenced, and the USSR did that on behalf of the U.S.
Well, Mr. McDonald, I'm not a conspirator. I think even Buchanan would vouch for that.
Well, you are a member of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Robert Welch. No, I don't think so. Yeah, I'm a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Is that a conspiracy?
Well, you've certainly. Well,
let me just tell you what Newsweek says this. The John Birch Society considers communism only one arm of a master conspiracy in which socialist American insiders are plotting to establish world government. Now, it also says, and here's Director John McManus, that's your public relations director, saying that former Secretary of State Alexander Haig and CIA Director William Casey are two of these master conspirators who are plotting to establish world government. Now, what do you that kind of silly, asinine statement is what makes people laugh. That's the John Birch Society.
Well, Tom, I'm sure being a long-standing member of the Rockefeller apparatus and as a member of the Council on Foreign Relations of long-standing, you're fully aware that there is an elitist core in this country that has seen value in subsidizing communism, or protecting communism.
It has?
Sure.
You're accusing me of subsidizing communism?
No, I'm saying
because I happen to belong to
there is an elite core.
Study group?
No, wait a minute. There is an elite core in this country that has dominated American society.
Well, I'm not one of them.
The
Trilateral Commission.
The Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations.
State Department, I suppose?
Well, let's face it, they've dominated the State Department for 40 years, and pretty much openly
All right, but what are they trying to do?
Well, their objective is to try to bring about a gradual transition in our society, a dissolving of sovereignty, and a moving steadily to the left on the political spectrum.
Well, who are they?
Belief, the elitist groups that I mentioned, particularly key individuals and policymakers in the Council on Foreign Relations.
Is the International Monetary Fund part of this?
Well, I would say the International Monetary Fund has certainly been set up for the purpose of facilitating that transfer of sovereignty and transfer of wealth on the road.
All right, we elected Mr. Conservative.
Let me just finish the point, because otherwise we're going to have a lot of unanswered questions. That you are looking at a group that has worked to bring about a dissolution of national sovereignties on the road to world government. And certainly you're familiar with local Professor Carroll Quigley, who has been part of your club, in which he admitted all this. And he said in his book, Tragedy and Hope, the only thing I disagree is that we've worked to keep it a secret. And you see Arthur Schlesinger Jr. writing way back in 1947, says, yes, this is the hidden policy of America. But we can't tell the American public because they're too unsophisticated to see the value.
What is the instrumentality of world government? What is the instrumentality?
Of all the things to say about Arthur, that's the silliest statement I ever heard. He never made anything like that.
Well, let me suggest that you read the May-June issue of the Partisan Review of 1947, Tom, and you can read it for yourself. It's called
Arthur Schlesinger said there was a conspiracy, to promote communism?
No, he didn't use the word conspiracy. He said the objective was to bring about... Well, let me finish. I'll tell you. He said that the objective, the secret policy, which we can't tell the American public because they're not sophisticated enough to see the value, is that through a steady result of erosion of new deals, we bring the American society steadily to the left, and through a sound concept of benign containment, we merge into the vital center of the socialist left. Those are his words, not mine.
I think John Kennedy was a member of that conspiracy?
No, let me ask you this. The World Federalist Movement in the post-war era contained a lot of people who eventually broke with it, and a lot of people thought the UN in the post-war era looked toward world government. Sure. Indeed they did, up until 48, 49. But a lot of them said, look, we were utopian, that's over and done with. We can't move, and a lot of them came in Kennedy's government. Schlesinger was in there when they were fighting in Vietnam, launched the effort in Vietnam. Schlesinger was behind the Bay of Pigs. In other words, look, isn't there some move that occurred in the post-war era that now has been dissipated because nobody believes in the utopian ideal of world government anymore?
Well, I think there are those that realize that moving straight from a prototype of the United Nations into world government perhaps is tactically impossible. But phasing out increasingly national sovereignty into regional government and phasing out sovereignties into international treaties in multiple areas could be a route.
The whole movement toward, quote, interdependence.
Yeah.
NATO is part of the conspiracy?
Well, there are certainly elements in NATO. There are people in NATO who are very strongly dedicated to the defense of the West. But at the same time, you find in NATO a steady dissolution. You find a growing weakness as a NATO policy dominated by State Department policies that has not worked.
Well, it's a regional grouping, and I think therefore it may be suspect by the John Birch Society.
We're talking with Congressman Larry McDonnell, who has recently been elevated, I guess, to chairmanship of the John Birch Society, succeeding Robert Welch. We'll be back in a minute.
China and Russia are both boogeymen who are used to frighten the inhabitants of the world so that they follow a pre-planned agenda to enslave every man, woman and child on this earth. All the governments of the world are working together. That's why things continue to steadily get worse. Now, for those who are paying attention, you would have noticed that there is a move to strip us of all our God-given rights, and I'll do a video talking about the issue of our rights and how they're being stripped away. Yeah, so I just wanted to end the video by saying, for those who are watching this video, you need to do your own research. Stop watching TV and believing the propaganda on TV, holding the remote control and thinking that you're getting good information. You're not. That's just propaganda. It's a form of brainwashing or mind control. Do your own research, first of all, by believe in God's word, read that for yourself, and be awake to what's going on so that you won't be deceived.